Well, hundreds of students have been protesting at Durham University as they demanded a safe and more inclusive campus. More than 300 students turned out to the demonstration after students who walked out of a speech by Spectator's associate editor Rod Liddell on the 3rd of December, where they were called pathetic by their principal, Professor Tim Luckhurst. Let's find out exactly what is going on at Durham University now with student Sophie Corcoran. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, do you think these students are pathetic? I mean, was that a reasonable thing for the principal to accuse them of?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's any question about that. They planned to walk out before the speech.
Yeah, sorry, but quickly, but that's the absolute madness of it, right? Because, you know, it's like when people go to a comedy gig and they sit in the front row and they're like, I was offended from start to finish.
The thing is, a lot of people, when they went into the formal, didn't know even who Rod Liddell was. And then they walked out because other people were walking out, and then all of a sudden they're trying to sack one of our best principals. Like, I just don't see how that works personally. But
one of the things that's really interesting is that in a matter of days, 400 students were able to organise. Why don't the students on campus that are pro-free speech or students that are sceptical of this, why aren't they organising in the numbers to show that these students don't represent students? Because we have this happen, which is quite a significant number. Then the press will go, oh, these students, you know, they're all into cancel culture. But then there are students like yourself who don't agree. And why don't we see more organising from those who support free speech?
Well, I think it was able to be organised so quickly because of the societies that are involved, and all of the student positions are run by lefty lunatics. They just are. Like the president of the Durham Students' Union held Jeremy Corbyn, as I quote, the white king, and said that any conservatives should be dealt with by roadmen. So I love how they always talk about safe spaces. I mean, you're not giving me very much of a safe space being a conservative, are you?
No.
If you're saying that we should be attacked by roadmen.
And what is it like for a student like yourself on campus who is maybe more small C conservative, or even someone that, you know, is pro-free speech? What does it feel like in that environment?
Well, I mean, most people hide the fact that they're pro-free speech because they know what's coming. But for those of us that don't, and those of us, obviously, I'm unfortunate in the fact that I'm not only a conservative, I'm also relatively high profile. So I just stood no chance, really, when I got there. I mean, I've been shouted at in the streets. I've had people come up to me all the time.
Talk to us a bit about that then. So how did that happen? So you've been at university now for one term.
Yeah,
So you've just finished your first term. Yeah. And already, in that first term, what's happened? You've had people shouting at you in the street. Just talk us through what actually physically happened there.
Yeah, so one time it was like 2 a.m. I just got back from London, and I was just walking through with my headphones in, with my little suitcase, and some girl come up to me and she tapped me and she was like, "You're Sophie, aren't you?" And I was like, "Well, yes." And then she was like, "Oh, you're a transphobe." And she started screeching, you know, all of the lefty buzzword bingos that they can get out of the book, everything with ist and ism on the end. And she was just screaming at me down the street, and I was all the way down the other end of the street, and I could still hear this lash screaming. I was like, what?
But the thing is, when we hear about university, we think this is meant to be a space for rigorous academic debate, you know, the clash of ideas in an intellectual way. And this is what all the stories we're hearing about it now. You hear more often than not students or even other academics against each other shutting down speech than opening up the space. I mean, doesn't that say something very sad about wider society?
Yeah, and you actually mentioned something that I find quite interesting, is that other academics, and now recently all of them at Durham have been turning on Tim. Like we've had so many emails of our students from other academics. I mean, my favourite one was the head of biology, Patrick, you're going to love this, head of biology stated that Rod Liddell's statements were flawed and offensive. The head of biology.
But my thing is that, you know, being offended is not...
No.
That doesn't... You know, you have a right to not be offended. No. You know, actually...
I'm offended by stuff all the time.
I'm offended by what they've done. You know, I'm offended.
But you're right, go on. I mean, it's true, isn't it? It's not a God-given right to not ever see or hear anything offensive whatsoever.
One of the things I saw in one of the statements, one of the students' groups, that they said student welfare should not be sacrificed in favour of free and academic speech. So student welfare, safety is now more important than free speech, which is a fundamental right for all. And do you think that this is contributing to a view of young people as victims, as vulnerable, as you know, just babies.
Yeah, I think it's a very childish view. I mean, a lot of them are saying that Rod Liddell is saying that, like, if you have a penis, you're a bloke, is a hate crime. Like, it's definitely not. But it's so annoying as a student. I'm genuinely sick of it, of these people being able to determine who we can and can't have on campus, because they are not the only students on campus. There are other people, and we pay because we want to hear different views, and they're incredibly selfish in what they're doing by saying that I don't like this person, so therefore nobody else should ever be able to hear what they've got to say because I don't like them, because they're snowflakes.
And just quickly, you mentioned that you've had negative responses. Have you had any fellow students or students across the country at all messaging you saying, you know, keep on going, keep on doing what you're doing, we agree?
Oh yeah, all the time. I think a lot of people are too scared to say how they feel because they know that they are going to be harassed on campus.
So can I just ask, what do you think now the root cause of this is? Is it that, where do they get these ideologies from? Or where do they get their such strongly held convictions from? Is it something that happens when they're at school? Is it a group thing? What's it coming from? Because for me, it wasn't like this when I was at university, and that wasn't that long ago.
It was definitely starting like that for me.
Yeah, I think, you know, I mean, like we said, the head of biology thinks that if you have a penis, you're a bloke, is apparently flawed. So there we go. So the teachers are pushing this as well. It's another thing of groupthink. I think, you know, we've got the whole Instagram infographic culture where if they put a petition on Instagram that somehow the world is going to change, even though it's not going to, just because it makes them morally better than everyone else. So it's a mixture of through school. Even, you know, the first thing I got to university, and I study business. Let me put that out. I don't do politics. I study business, and for some reason my lecturer was like, anybody who is not a straight white man under the Tories, your life is hell. I was like, right, that's great. What's this got to do with business?
Yeah.
Like,
well,
it's also not true.
No, but like it comes from the lecturers, and it even comes through, you know, sixth forms and things like that. It starts throughout school. You know, most teachers nowadays are sort of, you know, left-wing activists. We've seen them all come out the works in COVID. And that's where young people get it from. And then because they're brought into that and their peers are there, there's no challenge in that. And those that do challenge that are often, you know, run the risk. Because I always get told when I call out my university, be careful. Why should I be careful?
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to be careful.
No, it's not China.
No, exactly. But this is what it's coming to. Everyone's like, you know, just be careful. Even people like, you know, on the radio, some of the presenters I've worked with, they say, so just be careful. And I'm like, I shouldn't have to be careful.
No.
I should be able to say and call out their rubbish without thinking I'm going to lose my place in my degree or get kicked out of uni for doing nothing.
There's certainly, sorry to interrupt, there's certainly some views that we might give you a little boost. Anyway, fight the good fight. You're fearless and more like you are needed. And and Chris has said he thinks you're a brave young woman. Stand up to these left-wing lunatics. There you go. Good stuff.
Well, I think many people would echo. Yeah, very impressive student.
Yes.
Sophie Corcoran. Thank you for joining us.
Right.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we're going to delve into the terrifying world of my inbox for a second or two, are we? How does being inclusive reconcile with refusing to accept people with different views? This is, of course, about what we were just discussing there with Rod Liddell, essentially some students standing up and deciding to walk out of his speech because he hurt their feelings. So, yes, it's a hard one to reconcile.
I think Sophie made a really good point in the sense of, I think it's starting very, very young now. You know, we just we see these students and think, oh, this is lefty students. No, they're being taught. They didn't make up these ideas on their own. They're getting these things from the teachers, from the academics that are the ones that are creating all these academic theories that deconstruct everything about society. And I think the adults in the room need to take responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, you know, if we do create a situation where young people, like the guest we just had on there, Sophie, feel as though, obviously, thankfully, she doesn't feel like this, she's continued to speak up, but feel as though they need to be careful, that they might be alienated by their student community, especially in that environment. If you're in a halls of residence or a college or something, or you're on a campus, it's very easy for things to go viral, isn't it? It's very easy for you to become public enemy number one. And actually, a lot of the time, most of the time, people would rather just keep their mouth shut than risk that happening. And that's a concern, though. Exactly.
And, you know, not everyone you would be comfortable going on television like Sophie. So if you are someone that's perhaps on the fence and the people that you are meant to trust, you know, academics, administrators are saying, be careful, don't do that, then you're going to retreat because you would think, well, what do I know? Yeah. So I think it's hugely chilling. And I think we are raising a generation to be victims and intolerant.
Oh, absolutely. And again, and hateful. as well. That's the thing, hateful. You know, there's loads of people that I dislike, and there's no doubt there's loads of people who dislike me as well, but I don't walk up to them in the street and start haranguing them at 2 o'clock in the morning.
You don't organise protests of 400 people demanding that they are removed from, society for daring to question you.
No, ridiculous. But anyway...